You are sitting in the quiet of your own home, finally. The relationship is over. Or maybe you are still in it, standing at the edge of a decision you have been standing at for longer than you can remember. And instead of feeling free or clear or relieved, you feel haunted by a single question that will not leave you alone. How did I let this happen? You are not someone who is easily fooled. You are someone who reads people. You notice the shift in a room before anyone else does. You pick up on tonal changes, on what is not being said, on the quiet heaviness in someone's voice when they are performing happiness they do not feel. People call you perceptive. Your friends come to you when they need someone to see through a situation clearly. And yet, you stayed. You stayed through the silences that felt like punishment. You stayed through the apologies that always came just when you were close enough to the door to leave. You stayed through years of waking up at 2 in the morning, replaying conversations in your head, trying to find the right combination of words, the magic phrase that would finally make them understand you, finally make them see you, finally make things the way they were in the beginning when everything felt like it was made of gold. You stayed longer than made sense. And now, on the other side of it, a quiet and devastating voice keeps repeating the same verdict. I should have known better. I should have left sooner. What does it say about me that I didn't? Today, we're going to answer that question. Not with the answer society gives you, which is usually something about self-worth or red flags or why smart people stay with the wrong person, but with the actual answer, the one that lives in the neuroscience of your own brain. The one that explains not just what happened to you, but why your inability to leave was not a failure of character. It was, in the truest sense of the word, a survival masterpiece. You did not stay because you were weak. You stayed because your brain was doing exactly what brains are designed to do when they are trapped inside an unpredictable environment. And that is a completely different story from the one you've been telling yourself. Before we get to the science, let us talk about what society told you. Because the story society tells about people who stay in relationships like this is a cruel one. It says you lacked self-respect. It says you were codependent. It says you needed to love yourself more. It says that if you were really as smart and perceptive as you think you are, you would have seen the signs and walked out the door. But here's the paradox that psychology reveals, and this is the part I need you to hold on to. The very qualities that make you most likely to stay in a relationship like this are the same qualities that make you one of the most emotionally developed people in any room. Your deep sense of loyalty, your almost compulsive need to understand the people you love, to hold space for their pain, to believe in their capacity to change. Your ability to absorb someone else's emotional state and feel it as your own. These are not weaknesses. These are the qualities of someone with an extraordinarily sophisticated emotional brain. And a narcissist does not prey on the emotionally simple. They prey on the emotionally rich. Think about it this way. If you leave a slot machine after it has taken 20 of your coins, you feel nothing. You shrug and walk away. But if that machine has given you 20 wins scattered through all that loss, if it has been unpredictable enough to keep you wondering whether the next pull might be the one, you will stand there far longer than makes rational sense. Not because you are foolish, but because that is exactly how the machine was designed to work. A narcissistic relationship is that machine, and your brain, your loyal, empathetic, depth-seeking brain, was never supposed to be playing it at all. What felt like weakness was actually your nervous system working overtime in a system designed to exhaust it. The exit was not locked, but your brain was never given the chemical permission to take it. Let us go into the actual neuroscience of what happened inside your brain, not to make you feel like a lab rat, but because understanding the mechanism is the only thing that fully dissolves the shame of it. In 1957, the psychologist B.F. Skinner conducted what became one of the most replicated experiments in all of behavioral science. He put pigeons in boxes and gave them levers to press. Some levers gave a food pellet every time they were pressed, predictable, consistent reward. The pigeons used those levers and then moved on. But the levers that were programmed to give a pellet only sometimes, randomly, unpredictably, Those levers the pigeons could not stop pressing. They pressed them obsessively, long past the point that they were hungry, long past the point of logic. Skinner called this a variable ratio reinforcement schedule, and it produces the most persistent, compulsive behavior of any reward pattern ever studied. It's the same schedule used in slot machines, and it's the same schedule, whether consciously or not, that runs through every narcissistic relationship. The unpredictable kindness, the good week after 3 terrible ones, the moment of tenderness right when you had finally decided you were done. That randomness is not accidental. It is, neurologically speaking, the most powerful attachment-forming pattern that exists. Now let's talk about what that schedule does to the specific chemistry of your brain, because this is where it gets very personal. In the early phases of the relationship, what researchers call the idealization phase, and what survivors often describe as feeling like the best time of their life, your brain was flooded with dopamine, which is the chemical your brain uses to signal reward and possibility, and oxytocin, which is sometimes called the bonding hormone and is released during physical affection, deep conversation, and moments of emotional intimacy. Together, these chemicals forged what your brain tagged as one of the most significant relationships of your life. Your system bonded deeply, neurologically, at a cellular level. The neuroscientist and researcher Helen Fisher studied the brain activity of people who described themselves as deeply in love and found that love activates the same areas of the brain responsible for cocaine addiction, specifically the brain's primary reward and motivation circuits. In adversity-ridden relationships, she found, these effects can actually become stronger over time, not weaker. The brain that has been conditioned to associate a specific person with both intense reward and intense anxiety does not simply choose to stop. The neurochemical pull is real, it is physiological, it is, in every meaningful sense of the word, an addiction. And then there's cortisol, the stress hormone. When things were bad, when the silence came back, or the criticism started again, or they withdrew after a moment of warmth, your body flooded with cortisol, which is your nervous system's way of saying danger, high alert, scan for threat. Here's the cruel part of the chemistry. Research shows that cortisol and oxytocin together harden fear-based memories into the nervous system. The very stress your brain was experiencing to protect you was simultaneously cementing your attachment to the source of that stress. The fear was not making you want to leave. The fear was making you more bonded. In 1993, psychologists Donald Dutton and Susan Painter published one of the most important studies in the psychology of abusive relationships. After assessing 75 women who had recently left abusive relationships, they found that the single strongest predictor of continued emotional attachment to an abusive partner was not the frequency or severity of the abuse, but its intermittency, the unpredictable cycling between punishment and reward. Even 10 months after leaving, the trauma bond remains strong for most survivors. Their conclusion was clear. The decision to stay is really not a decision at all. It's an addictive response from a nervous system that was conditioned, not chosen. There's one more piece of the brain to understand, and it's the one that explains why you could see the problem clearly and still not be able to move. The prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking, planning, and making decisions in your own best interest. It's essentially your inner voice of reason. But under chronic stress, which is exactly what a long-term narcissistic relationship creates, the prefrontal cortex becomes suppressed. It doesn't go offline entirely, which is why you could still analyze the situation, still see the patterns, still know something was wrong. But its ability to override the emotional and survival-based parts of your brain diminishes significantly. This means that the part of you that could see clearly was always there. But the part of your brain running on cortisol and conditioned dopamine deprivation was louder, faster, and more ancient. It wasn't a contest of intelligence, it was a contest between the most evolved part of your brain and a 300-million-year-old survival system. And the survival system was always going to win until the conditions changed enough to let it rest. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, whose book, The Body Keeps the Score, is one of the most important psychology texts of the last 30 years, established that under chronic stress, the brain's threat detection center remains in a state of sustained high alert, constantly scanning for danger. In a narcissistic relationship, the environment is never truly safe. The rules change without notice, affection arrives unpredictably, and so the alarm system never gets to stand down. It runs continuously, consuming the cognitive resources that would otherwise be available for clear decision-making. Van der Kolk wrote that trauma is not just an event that took place in the past. It is also the imprint left by that experience on mind, brain, and body. What your body carried was not weakness. It was the record of a threat it never got to fully resolve.
And one last thing before we move on. If you grew up in a home where tension was the normal setting, where you learned early to read the mood of the room before you could read a book, where safety felt like something you had to earn every day by being good enough or quiet enough or smart enough, then your nervous system did not enter that relationship as a blank slate. It entered it already trained, already primed, already deeply familiar with the specific feeling of waiting for the storm to break. For people with that history, the narcissistic relationship did not feel like danger. It felt like home. And that is the most important thing to understand, because it's the thing that holds the most compassion for why you stayed. Now, here's the part nobody gets to hear, because the conversation about surviving a narcissistic relationship almost always stops at the wound. It almost never reaches the other side of it. Researchers Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun at the University of North Carolina spent decades studying what happens to people after major psychological losses and traumas. What they found is now known as post-traumatic growth, and it directly contradicts the idea that surviving something devastating simply means getting back to the person you were before. Their research found that the majority of trauma survivors reported not returning to their previous level of functioning, but exceeding it. Not despite the experience, because of it. Let us talk about specifically what that looks like for you. The first thing you built is what I would call a human truth reader. Surviving a relationship with someone who communicated one thing and meant another consistently for months or years requires you to develop a level of perceptual sensitivity that most people never need. You learn to read the truth behind the words, the real emotion under the performance, the difference between a genuine apology and one designed to pull you back in. Research from Cambridge University found that people who have navigated high-complexity emotional environments consistently score higher in emotional intelligence than average. You did not just survive that relationship, you graduated from it with a map of human deception that cannot be taught in any classroom. The masks people wear are no longer invisible to you, and that's not just a skill, that is a form of protection that will guard you for the rest of your life. The second thing you built is calibrated empathy. Before the relationship, your empathy may have been something you gave freely, perhaps even recklessly, because you hadn't yet learned that some people use another person's capacity for empathy as a tool against them. What the relationship did, without you choosing it, was calibrate that empathy. You still feel everything. You are still capable of extraordinary depth of feeling for the people around you, but you have also developed a clearer picture of where you end and where another person begins. You now know the difference between caring for someone and disappearing into them. That boundary is not coldness, it is wisdom. The third thing you built is an internal compass that no longer needs someone else to confirm it. When someone spends months or years systematically questioning your perceptions, telling you that what you saw was not what happened, that what you felt was not valid, and you survive it with enough self intact to stand on the other side, something remarkable has occurred. You have proven to yourself at a cellular level that you can hold your own sense of truth even when someone with authority in your life is telling you it's wrong. Psychologists call this an internal locus of control. You earned that in the hardest way possible, and nobody can take it back. The fourth thing you built is a map of manipulation. In the early stages of the relationship, you couldn't name what was happening because you had never seen the full pattern before. But now you have seen it, completely, from the inside. The love bombing at the start, the gradual withdrawal of warmth used as a control mechanism, the way a small piece of genuine kindness always arrived exactly when you were at your lowest, pulling you back in. You have traced every road that pattern takes, which means it can never fully work on you again. That awareness protects not just you, but every person who matters to you going forward. And the fifth thing, which I believe is the most quietly powerful of all, is that you now know what real peace feels like. Not because you read about it, but because you've lived without it for long enough to know exactly what it costs. People who have never lived without peace do not always recognize it as the extraordinary gift it is. They take a quiet evening for granted. They don't notice the specific feeling of walking into a room without bracing for something to change. You will never take those things for granted. Tedeschi and Calhoun found that one of the most consistent outcomes of post-traumatic growth is an intensified appreciation for ordinary moments, a depth of gratitude for simple safety and simple kindness that cannot be manufactured by someone who has never lost those things. Your threshold for joy has been permanently recalibrated. And that means the ordinary beauty of a safe, honest relationship, when it comes, will feel to you the way it only feels to someone who knows exactly what it cost to find it. So here's what I want you to walk away holding today. You did not stay because you were broken. You stayed because your brain was functioning exactly as a human brain functions when it has been conditioned by a system deliberately designed to make leaving feel impossible. The dopamine addiction was real. The oxytocin bond was real. The cortisol-hardened attachment was real. The way your prefrontal cortex got quieter and quieter under the weight of chronic stress, that was real. None of it was a character flaw. All of it was chemistry. And chemistry, with time and safety, heals. The healing is not a return. It's not about becoming the person you were before. That person, as wonderful as they were, did not yet have everything you have now. The perceptual sensitivity, the calibrated empathy, the internal compass, the map of the trap drawn from the inside. You are not the same person who walked into that relationship, and that is not a loss. That is the whole point. Bessel van der Kolk wrote that the body keeps the score, that everything your nervous system lived through is stored not just in your memories, but in your muscles, your breathing, your instinctive responses. And the work of healing is not to delete that record. It's to teach your body, slowly and gently and with enormous patience, that the emergency is over. You are allowed to rest now. You are allowed to stop scanning. You are allowed to be in a room without bracing for the silence to change. You are allowed to be a beginner at being taken care of, to feel strange and unfamiliar when someone is simply kind to you with nothing expected in return. You spent years being a human doing, managing, predicting, absorbing, translating, holding everything together. It's finally safe enough to just be a human being. The years you stayed were not wasted. They were the tuition. And what you graduated with is something no one who never paid that price can ever buy. The question is no longer why you stayed. The question is, what are you going to build with everything you know? If this video found you today, if you found yourself nodding at a screen thinking, how does this channel know the inside of my head? Then I want you to do one thing before you close it. Drop a comment below and finish this sentence. The moment I knew something was wrong was... You don't have to share everything, just that first moment, because naming it out loud, even in a comment section, is the first act of the nervous system starting to trust that the emergency is over. Hit subscribe, because next week we're going deeper into something that lives inside every survivor of a relationship like this. The reason your brain can't stop replaying conversations from years ago, why that loop runs, what it's actually trying to do, and how you finally get to turn it off. It's going to feel exactly as accurate as this one did. And the video on screen right now explains why your pattern recognition, the very thing that makes you feel like you should have seen this coming, is actually one of the highest forms of intelligence there is. It will change the way you see yourself. I'll see you there.